wait for the, can you wait
And
for
there
the
will be a
microphone?
microphone circling amongst you, so we will hear and record it.
The microphone does not broadcast to the room, it's just for the benefit of the cameras. So speak up.
Hello, my name's Catherine Wolfe. I'm from the University of Bedfordshire, where I'm the course leader for TV production. I've got a question for Fred from Sunderland. How do you square the circle between the creating the content for your broadcast and managing it within an academic framework? In other words, do students put in a lot of extracurricular time to create content, or have you managed to fit it in within the teaching and the curriculum, or a bit of both?
In terms of where we are on kind of the evolutionary curve, I can answer better for radio at the moment than TV, because TV, you know, we're further behind on the curve that's developing. On the radio side, what we thought was going to happen with 107 Spark FM, the radio brand, was that much of the content would be driven by assessment. And actually, there's a considerable amount of assessment that links into on-air content. But what we've been overwhelmed by and gratified by is the fact that so much is happening to the extent that it cannot be stopped by us as lecturers, in fact, driven directly by students who are doing it because. And so we don't really need to square that circle as kind of an exercise with an outcome, because they are in large measure unstoppable, you know, and I'm not sort of speaking with some kind of great aspiration here as if, you know, that's what I want. That actually is what is happening right now. So what we found is it's taken on a life of its own. There's a large number of modules across levels 1, 2, and 3, stages 1, 2, and 3, as we now call them, which input to on-air content. But actually, if we were to make the judgment, which of course we wouldn't, that assessment shouldn't be linked to Spark content tomorrow, the radio station 24/7 would continue. I suspect it would continue, frankly, if we walked away, or even if we were to hive it off from the University of Sunderland. So it's not really an exercise, fortunately, we've had to work through in any kind of method, you know, any kind of forensic fashion, because it's just a question that's answered itself through student enthusiasm.
Thank you, Fred. Yeah.
Gary Stevens from the University of Lincoln. I'm just interested in how reliant we need to be on advertising revenue. And I'm thinking of what Tony Daniels was saying about the fact that Siren FM, community radio station, is not allowed to take advertising revenue. I don't know who the question's for, though.
I think advertising revenue is going to be key. I think the concept of what advertising revenue is, though, is going to change a lot over the next few years. I think the concept of spot advertising at the moment is what is the driving force in television as we have it now, but that's a linear thing. And as we move off linear television, I think you're going to find product placement. We're already seeing some very interesting proposal figures coming from Channel 5 in the past 2 days about how much they'll be earning. I think the other thing as well, though, is commission programming. Commission programming did very well for us in Ireland in what, in effect, it was you were asking local businesses either from the same genre or perhaps from even one company to make their own infomercials, for example. And we got relaxation of some rules from the Broadcasting Authority of Ireland. But in effect, what you were doing was you were creating factual content that was revolving around that. The other two areas which you're going to see probably having revenue are sponsorship. I think sponsorship is actually going to be quite big, because I think brand association with local television is quite a healthy thing. And I think the other thing are the traditional infomercials as well, which I was always hesitant about actually being good earners until I actually saw the numbers that they actually turn over. I think on Sky, you have the infomercials up at, is it the 700s, or I should know these off the top of my head, I don't though. They have the infomercials up in the 700s, and I think that QVC are literally doing tens of millions in revenue. At the moment, however, the driving force is spot revenue. The issue is that the only pool that is being discussed is national spot revenue. And I can't see the Channel 4s and ITVs of this world, who are going to have an opinion in DCMS, being very supportive of, by all means, yes, we will let you come in and eat our pie. And I think that I think you're going to see massive. I suspect the resistance is already going on. Sorry.
I agree with lots of things that you've said, including how long it should take to get the same currency that network television gets in order to be able to take to national advertisers. But a really important area, which radio does really very well, or has in the past done very well, is to add value to national campaigns below the line. Coca-Cola, for example, has a major national roadshow going around the country, promoting its involvement in the Olympics. Local television could just milk that beyond imagination, and I think that's an area that you shouldn't ignore.
We've got time for one more in this session before we move on. Good colleague.
Hello. Could I ask just a little bit in this comparison between radio and television? The delivery mechanism for radio is very simple and straightforward. You know, you switch your radio on, you cruise the airwaves, there it is. Whereas the delivery mechanism for television is much more complicated. So from the top down, EPG6, fantastic, but that's very costly. So how do you get people to this channel easily? Whether it's IPTV, whether it's whatever. Yeah, you actually getting people to the channel. You know, with radio, it's, you know, it doesn't take much advertising. You spin across your airwaves with Spark FM, you know, and you find it. You've got an audience of these young people. They tend to tune in. But how do you do that same thing for local television? Where does that come from?
Interesting to mention, you were saying, you know, you spin across the airwaves and you find Spark FM on 107. Yes, you do, and we're lucky that it's a pretty ballsy transmitter that gets out there. But actually, I myself increasingly find that when I'm being lazy around the house, I'm listening to Spark FM on this, and so are our students. And actually, this is the platform, so too is the iPad, the Playbook et al., which is the platform that delivers Spark FM, will also deliver Spark TV, will deliver some of the other initiatives that we've heard about. Patton was talking last night at the RTS, wasn't he, about the resilience. He mentioned in his speech the resilience of linear broadcast. He didn't use that exact term, but that's a term I've also heard used by the chief exec of Channel 4, and it is true, but actually, definitely, we know anecdotally, even if we don't have the research for Spark listeners, and it will be the same for consumption of television, a lot of it now is not linear real-time, and a lot of it is being done through devices like the smartphone. So actually, that is the point of reference for the viewer as well as the listener.
Yeah, one final point, Colin.
We come back to radio again, isn't it? We've got a younger audience who are always on those. You know, that's what they do. And I'm still not sure whether that's actually the model for local television, necessarily. What is the audience? What is the research showing us? Who are those people who are going to tune into local television? Is it the up to 25s, or is it much older? And the much older group aren't on those smartphones as much.
You can't be prescriptive in local television about who your audience is going to be, because it's going to be different from area to area. The one thing I would say is that if you're asking how do you get an audience, quite frankly, through marketing and local partnerships. If you're tapping into the local zeitgeist, as we say all the time, we think the universities are so relevant when it comes to the 15 to 24s, for example. What's interesting at the moment? Cool, let's go ahead and make it. But it's about very much being aware of the local market you operate in. I sound like one of those silly phrases you hear in The Apprentice or anything, but you've got to know your market. And anyone who's coming in and saying, here's a one-size-fits-all policy, we drop it into all these different places, and we have the kind of centralized operations. From an operating point of view, that sounds great. From an audience point of view, it sounds crazy, to be quite honest with you. It's essential that local partners are there. For example, if you have the local newspapers, MEN were really driving audiences for Channel M, for example. We should never forget, Channel M were doing £300,000 a month in revenue, with only 4 to 6 sales staff, depending on who you ask. Their cost of sale was actually one of the lowest. The problem was their production base. But it's marketing and local partnerships. The detail beyond those, though, is something that will be different in every area.
Okay, thank you. Just one very, very final point.
Thank you very much for a very useful morning, but I haven't heard any numbers at all for the whole morning. What does it cost? What kind of profit? How much are these stations or media centres financially sustainable? What kind of grants do you get? Who pays? And where are the research numbers?
Who'd like to pick up that one?
We have a number in our head that's about half of what Nicholas Schott proposed. He was saying about 1.6 million would be needed in revenue a year. I think we can do it for much less. The reason we think we can do it for much less is we have, and these stations are still on air in different places. I would point out that local television is still going in Ireland, which is probably the worst recession that anyone has seen. I think the Greeks are even ahead of us. We're just better at covering it up. But if I could just go back to the point, you're looking at about, depending on the synergies you get and the local partnerships, you could be comfortably in profit for under 100,000 a month in revenue, quite frankly, and that's outputting a huge amount of content. If you're the one thing I would say is that when I'm talking about these numbers, I think taking BBC license money and everything, and I think we've referred to it today, I have a bit of a hang-up about taking any public money outside of the DTT technical upgrades that are necessary, because I don't think the great British public really would like a private company getting a handout from any type of tax fund, even if it has got very noble intentions. So even though we'd like the 5 million a year, we don't really see it happening. We also see, by the way, the administration costs of the BBC probably eating about 20% of that before any of it emerges. And also, I think all of us know in our hearts and souls, there's no cash coming out of the BBC for local TV.
Thank you very much indeed. I think we're going to draw this section to a close here. Final